everyone, welcome back to the railroad, the Union Pacific Railroad Evanston subdivision in HO Scale. My name is Daryl Cruz, owner and builder of the layout, and your host for episode 42 of season 2024. As you can see, some work has been done on the railroad since last week. Have installed their bridges across Weber River at Holcim Cement. If you get a chance, make sure you like this video, subscribe for more. Make sure you comment if you could. I really appreciate it. Here's how things looked last week when I did the update. I mainly worked on the backdrop and just did a little bit of scenery forming there to kind of see where the scenery would line up with the backdrop. And things were looking pretty good. It's amazing how much just a backdrop improves the look of a layout. Now, of course, I'm not going to stop there. Have to go ahead and add some bridges. These are a couple of Walthers single track through truss bridges and 4 of the micro engineering plate girder bridges. And they're 50 foot for the approach bridges, and then I think this is like 150 feet, maybe not quite that, for the through truss bridges. All of these bridges match almost perfectly the bridges that are on the prototype crossing. And now, as you can see, these bridges are like right up against each other. And when I laid this out, I measured using the satellite photos to make sure I got the right distance, but somehow it didn't work out right. And as you can see, here's a satellite picture of the bridges, and you can see there is a separation between the two. It came out to like 7 feet, which is about an inch. So when I got these built and put them on the layout, I realized that I'm going to have to do some reworking of the roadbed so that these would cross the Weber River at the appropriate distance from each other, so that it would look, much more closely like the prototype. So I realized I was going to have to somehow extend this roadbed out about an inch. And I just basically took some scrap wood and laid it on there and drew underneath it to get it to match as closely as I could with the existing roadbed. I was not going to add anything for the span because that was going to be cut out anyway. So from here then, actually it's going to be back a little bit from there. But again, I needed to come out an inch and then kind of taper it to the existing roadbed. So it was not work that I was planning on doing. I'm not sure how it came out that way. Either the satellite photo was wrong, because I measured it again, and I do have these the right distance apart according to the satellite photo. So I don't know if these bridges are actually wider than the bridges that are actually on the prototype, or if the satellite photo is off a little bit. But anyway, in order to make it look like the prototype, I knew I was going to have to, widen it a little bit. All right, so here you can see I do have them painted, and then also added some roadbed so that I can move it out. Now, I could only move it on this side because on the other side, there was a turnout right there, right before the bridges. So if I was going to move that, I was going to have to do something with the turnout. Here's a picture of them. I realized as I was looking at this that one of the bridges is silver and the other one's green. So I'm going to have to change that. So this side is green, the other side is silver. So it'll be kind of a cool look with them being two different colors and of course a lot of rust and everything. But then you could see from that photograph also that there was, separation between the two. So again, I could only move the near track out a little bit because you can see that turnout there. Was not going to be able to move that side, the far track, because the turnout pretty much locked it in place. But I only needed an extra inch, so it probably worked out better to do it all on one side anyway. Yeah, I basically just kind of, like I said, cut a piece of scrap plywood, spliced it in there. There's a piece of plywood underneath it to splice the two pieces together, and then it's glued together. I actually ended up cutting that little extension off once the glue dried. I'll show you where we cut it here in just a little bit. So I was ready to put them in the right spot. Now, one thing I really liked about this foam road bed is that it comes up very easily. So I was able to just slice it where it was supposed to be and then kind of move it over. And I notice I have it moved over for the first area there, and then still have to do this side. And now I have it all done. Of course, it added a little bit to the length since I moved it out. Actually moved it out a little bit. Now, I didn't really need to put the road bed across the span. I'm going to have to add some more plywood here before I ballast. But I might cut that a little bit thinner also. Maybe touch it up a little bit so it's not so uneven. But, the ground is not always even. So I'm not really too concerned about it. Okay, now here's a look. Here's how it looks with the new layout. Again, that road bed I didn't really need to put down there, but you can kind of see how things line up. And it is about an inch separation now, so that's pretty close to the prototype. And I was just kind of checking to make sure everything lined up. Yeah, I want to draw in some lines there also so that I could see where exactly I needed to cut the plywood to remove the existing span of plywood and then, of course, replace it with the bridges. All right, once I figured out exactly where it was supposed to go, I then just drew in some pencil lines so I could see exactly where to cut so it would fit perfectly. Now on this side, the actual cut was out a little bit. See, there's a seam there already, so I decided to just cut it where the seam was. It seemed kind of silly to have that little piece extending off there, so I decided I was going to cut it with a seam, and then when I put in the abutment, I would put a 1x4 in there for the abutment, which I probably was planning on doing anyway. If I had kept that piece there, I would have put the 1x4 underneath the plywood. This way I'll just put it up against the plywood. Okay, so here the span has been cut out. So this is where, so you notice on this side I was going to put it like right up against the plywood rather than underneath it. On this side, it's going to go underneath. Now, there is some plywood there. Was going to notch it out, but I decided just to cut a piece off and then put it underneath it. You'll see how that looks here in just a bit. Now, all this, the abutments are going to be covered with, here's the span, here's the bridge that has served its purpose quite well for over a year. No longer needed. But now we have the 1x4s in. Added a little bit of extra roadbed there. Wasn't real happy that it was going to be a little piece of track there, but that's the way it goes. Again, I'm going to cover these abutments up with some styrene so it looks more like concrete and not painted wood. You can see how I just cut it and then moved it over, or moved it down a little bit and then attached it. So the wood abutments right now are just there to provide the footing for where the bridges are going to set on, and then I'm going to put on again some plastic, some styrene around it. Because the abutments are kind of shaped a certain way, I kind of want to match the prototype on how the abutments look. But I basically then, when I put the piece of plywood underneath it, I wanted to make sure that the plywood there was at exactly the right height so that it would be a nice smooth transition from the roadbed to the bridge. And I am using a scrap piece of 2x8 that's left over from my deck that I built over 3 years ago. And so I'm using, I didn't have any piers yet. I ordered some, but they didn't come in yet, so I decided to just use the scrap deck wood, 2x8 pieces, and use those as stand-ins. And I did do some measuring to make sure it was cut exactly the right height and everything. And I'll just, when I start working on the piers themselves, I will use these scrap pieces of wood that I cut to measure exactly where I'm going to cut the piers that are actually going to be on the layout. So you can see how everything lines up pretty good. Of course, nothing's glued down yet. Have to put the track in, and the bridges won't be actually glued in and set in place permanently until get to the point where I'm ready to ballast everything. So the separation looks a little, maybe a little wider than the prototype, but I think looks pretty good. I think I've come to the conclusions that the measurement tool on the satellite photos is not that accurate. All right, here I'm putting the track in. Of course, when I put in a piece of track, just that much short. So I had to actually cut that off a little bit and put another piece in there. And here it is with all the track in. These are micro engineering. That's perfectly straight there. I used a T-square to, that one needs some work on the left side, but the right side is perfectly straight. I used a T-square that I use for sheetrocking. Use that to get it perfectly straight. You can see the transition from regular ties to the bridge ties. Still have to put the timbers on the edges of the ties, and then of course the guardrails also, but that again is going to go in last. Again, those bridge track is from Micro Engineering. It comes in 3-foot lengths, and this span here was like just 2 inches short of the 3 foot. So it's definitely the longest bridge on the layout. This is what I'm going to be working on next week, the trestle bridge, and then also the highway bridge going across there. So looks pretty good. Now, one other thing I wanted to to fix was this shadow that you can see under here, and I added a second set of LED lights, and you'll see exactly the difference here. It's without it, and then that's with the second set. So there's 2 strips of LED lights underneath there. They're really easy to put in. They just stick to the wood. And these are 6,000 Kelvin, so it's basically daylight colors. You can maybe see there where I have the two strips. Again, this is what I'm going to be working on next week, or this coming week, the trestle bridge, and start. I'm also going to put in the piers here. I ordered some from Walthers, which you'll see here in a bit. So I'm going to get the piers put in and then work on the bridges back here. So hopefully by next week we'll have all the bridges put in, and maybe even some more scenery forms. And then the week after that we'll maybe get to some plastering. This area's been a lot of fun so far to work on scenery-wise. If you look there in the distance, they have the last section to do, which is Echo Canyon. But everything turned out pretty good. This is how it looks. Now here's the piers I'm going to use. These are resin kits. Have some information about the back. What I was mostly interested in is how do you cut it? And it says there that you can be cut with saws. So I'm going to see. I have a miter saw, a Ryobi power miter saw, but I'm not sure if the blade I have in there is going to, what it's going to do with this resin. It's really hard and is also heavy. So I'm going to see what happens. I may have to go with a different blade that's able to cut this material. But this one is not wide enough. So not only is it going to be too high, but it's not wide enough for both bridges. So it's going to have to go out about that far. So I thought maybe I could buy 3 to make 2, cut one in half and then put it on the end of it, kind of glue them together. But this came out to about 5 1/4, and if you take 5 1/4 times 1 1/2, you get 7 7/8, which if you look at what I'm going to need here, that might be enough, but I don't know. So I bought 2 for each, so I bought 4 of them, and we'll kind of see how it goes. I'm kind of really interested in how it's going to go with cutting those piers. Would really like to use my miter saw so I can make sure I get it, my power miter saw, so I can make sure that I get it cut at exactly right angles or parallel or whatever, so that it has a nice, when I glue them together, there's not much of a visible seam, and that I'm able to get it nice and flat so it sets level. All right, now we get some trains rolling across the bridges. This is pretty cool, I think. I always love bridges on train layouts. I always liked the Mississippi River Bridge I had on the Geneva subdivision, my N-scale layout. I still have that and have it on display. I'm thinking I'm going to take it down, though, and I just need some more shelving space. So I'm not sure what I'm going to do with it. But I definitely like bridges. This is one I think is going to be pretty cool. We see just a straight manifest train going across. You notice I have trains running on the upper level as well. That area there where the train is going, that's where the last section of scenery is going to be. That's where Echo Canyon. So once I get this area here done, I should be able to get this all done by Christmas, I'm thinking. And then Echo Canyon will probably take another month. or so. So hopefully by February I'll have all the basic scenery done and start working on some weathering. We have a rail group operating weekend coming up in the end or the third weekend in February, and I'm on that weekend, and so definitely want to get the basic scenery all done for that, and then maybe some weathering too. We'll see. I might just make sure I get all the scenery done and then just make sure everything's operating at top notch. I wanted to do some work with transponding, but I don't know. We'll see. Definitely things are moving along as we see a couple of manifest trains rolling through. It looked really cool seeing both trains going across the bridge. Do have one disappointment on this video, on this particular scene, and that disappointment is the last car is missing its end of train device. It's probably somewhere along the tracks. Those things fall off every once in a while, especially if I have the trains run into each other, which unfortunately happens every once in a while. But anyway, so I lose them, but then I always run across them eventually. So I usually have some on the trains themselves. I have a little storage area for extras. So some of the EOT devices are on the trains, some are in the storage area, and some are along the track somewhere. And it always kind of works out that they always are enough to use for all the mainline trains. Now that's going to be really cool when that's going to be Echo Canyon there in the distance, and then making the transition from Echo Canyon into the Weber River Canyon. There's a definite change in the color of rocks from one area to the other. So it's going to be pretty cool. Thanks so much for watching, everybody. That's it for this week. Stay tuned for the updates every Sunday. See what I'm up to and how things are going on the layout. And I also have some videos during the week, especially live videos. I might put those up every once in a while. Again, thanks so much for watching. Have a great rest of your weekend and a great week coming up. Take care, everybody.